Hi, I'm Yurgi Urrutia from Kingston Libraries in Victoria, and today I'm really excited to be talking to Sam Wallman. But first, I would like to acknowledge the Bunurong people of the Kulin Nation as the custodians of the land from where I'm speaking, and I acknowledge that sovereignty was never ceded. I pay respect to their elders, past, present, and emerging, and extend that respect to all First Nations people from across the land. We need a treaty. Now, today we have Sam Wallman, who is a comics journalist and cartoonist. His drawings have been published in The Guardian, New York Times, The Age, ABC, and SBS. He has also done a lot of work for unions and for the Workers' Art Collective, and he's based in Melbourne. Welcome to Alia Graphics, Sam. How are you going?
Thanks, buddy. I'm good. From Wurundjeri country myself, so yeah, pay my respects also. Thanks for having me, man.
Excellent. And you've just landed back in Melbourne, is that right?
That's right, yeah. Over the jet lag now, thankfully.
Over the jet lag, good man, excellent. So Our Members Be Unlimited is your first graphic novel. So congratulations.
Thank you.
The book's just been published in Australia. Is it also published internationally? And if so, when?
Yeah, it's coming out in New Zealand or Aotearoa at the moment, I think, the same time. And then it's scheduled for release in the US. It was going to be November, but because of all the stuff happening with Amazon, all the great shit happening with them unionizing, they're trying to bring it forward. So I think it's coming out in September there and Canada. And maybe the UK, but I think they're still trying to work that out.
Yeah. And you mentioned Amazon there, and I think that's something that we should talk about. We'll get back to that because, yeah, I think it's really interesting. So anyway, we'll talk about the book later, but you've done a lot of other things, lots of graphic design, posters. Can you talk to us about the kind of work you do in general?
Yeah, sure. I guess I'm like a gun for hire for visual stuff for different grassroots groups like unions or activist groups or NGOs who are often trying to communicate something a little bit complicated, but not always. Sometimes it's just like rah-rah propaganda or making placards or banners and things like that. But yeah, I often do comics, single panel cartoons, posters for workplaces. It's a bit of a grab bag, which is kind of the only way that I can make it work financially as well, is by doing lots of random different stuff. And that's also what keeps it interesting from a creative perspective as well. Like if I was just doing union stuff, I would probably get really bored of that and run out of ways to draw like a group of people with their fist in the air or something. So I like doing different types of stuff. So I could tell you like the things I was working on today, if that would be a good drill course sample. Maybe it's like I'm doing something for the NIB, this American comics journalism website. So there's a group called the Pinkertons, which is a spy detective agency started in the mid-1800s, like as a union busting force. They used to actually massacre striking workers. They come up all through history when you look at massive labor disputes that got smashed, like in Appalachia and the Haymarket dispute and all this. But they're still around. Like they still operate, and they're currently helping union bust Amazon. So they don't shoot workers anymore, but yeah, they're a pretty nefarious force and very secretive, like very cinematic kind of group. Their tagline is "We never sleep," and it's just like the fodder of a good comic. So I'm doing an essay trying to explore what they've meant to the history of labor, and that's been fun to research. Or kind of depressing, but I'm trying to make it like, I always try and make the work have an organizing dimension so that people don't just read it and go, "Oh, we're all fucked, aren't we?" So yeah, I'm trying to spin it a little bit. So that's been good. And then I'm doing a poster for the manufacturing union, the AMWU, about, we're doing a series, I'm on the second one, about mental health in manufacturing workplaces, because they've done a really good job at like educating their members about physical OHS and taking care to not get injured in your body and stuff. But now they're trying to get mental health and mental injury to the same level and sort of equate them, which is, I think, is really cool. And it's kind of hard because you're trying to pitch it to like a blokey workforce, which, you know, it's hard work, so they become hard people. And so trying to work out how to pitch that stuff, like talk about mental health in a way that will reach these people and be stuck up on their pinboards and stuff, that's cool. And then, yeah, a couple other little gigs. Yeah, we can talk about them later though, but I'm rabbiting on a little bit. Yeah, no, that's cool. That's really cool. And, you know, what you were mentioning about the Pinkertons, I think I read about them in maybe the People's History of the United States by Howard Zinn. Yeah, I think they mentioned there. I think he goes through that at some point. Oh, nice. Yeah, my boyfriend is reading that now. It's like so big. I feel like if he reads it in bed, and it's going to knock him out if it falls on his face. It's an excellent book. It's a really fascinating book. Yeah. Yeah, I wish I had the patience to read something that thick, but a lot of people I know say it's like a pivotal text for them. Like they read it when they were X age and it started them on this trajectory. So yeah, I have my dad to thank for that. Yeah, cool. He often gave me books like, read these, it will give you a different perspective. Like, okay. That's awesome. Yes. So look, coming back to comics, because it's what we love and it's why we're talking today. Did you read comics as a kid? And if so, what comics, or when did you start reading comics? Or it wasn't a huge comic set. Like I loved cartoons and like any cartoon really. And yeah, I guess I was obsessed with The Simpsons, like very, very obsessed, and any merch I could get. So that meant the comics as well. So I did hang out at the comic shop to get those and just pore over them. Like I loved it. And I'd feel like quite betrayed because some of them, the show was obviously very uniform and very tight animation style. And then sometimes the comics would be a bit rushed and like scrappy, and I'd just be like, oh, like repulsed, like they pierced the veil or something. I was like, how could? And then like maybe Ren and Stimpy comics and just any comic based on the cartoons that I loved. Probably I didn't really get into superheroes very much, but not that there's anything wrong with that, but just didn't seem. I like drawings that are like crazy or a bit bendier or something. I never liked cartoons that are trying to look real, unless they're hyper real, like anime or Akira or something like that. But I just felt like it was a waste of a cartoon if you didn't make the head stretch out or do something fantastical like Superman. Just there's like explosions, and I guess he can fly, but just visually it wasn't crazy enough for me. No, like, well, I can see already a style, you know, with The Simpsons and Ren and Stimpy and things like that. And it's great, those kind of things, you know, how they stretch things. I love that kind of really cartoony kind of stuff. I love it. Make the most of the art form, you know, because otherwise you just may as well be like a midday movie, the way some comics are drawn. It's like, why does this need to be a comic? But yeah, I think I remember my mum. So your dad gave you the People's History of the United States, cool as. My mum gave me the Bible in comic form and paid me $5 to read it. That's the only other comic I can think of. I think I very much skimmed that one. Just that $5. I gather it wasn't the Robert Crumb version. No, that would be cool. What a weird choice you made. Robert Crumb did a version of the Bible. I saw that. I never looked at it though. Did you read it? Yeah, I've got it. Really? I've got it here. I've got it at home. Yes, it's crazy. It's absolutely insane. Highly recommend it. Yeah. What a tripper.
Anyway, so at what point did you, what's your origin story? I guess, what point did you think, you know what, I wanna be a cartoonist, or I wanna make comics, or I wanna make cartoon strips, or.
Yeah, I don't think there was any one time. Like, I never really thought it would be a viable job or anything. I just loved drawing from when I was a little kid, and just never wanted to like paint, or apparently like never even wanted to use color. Just wanted to draw cartoons with black ink. And they just couldn't stop me drawing at school, apparently. Like, I ran into my primary school teacher at a gay bar when I was like in my early 20s, and he's like, "Oh, did you end up having autism? Because we just could not stop you drawing ever." I was like, "Oh, okay, I don't think so." But yeah, it was like very compulsive at a young age. And then as I got older, it was kind of, I don't know, as like a queer kid or a shy kid or whatever, like it was a way to be under the radar a little bit and fit in, or like have a cool angle a little bit. So I would just like draw to express myself and like be understood, but also like just to, I don't know, like, I don't know, it's always just been this very fundamental outlet for me. And then as I got older, I got into activism in my late teens, and you'd be at a meeting and, they'd be handing out tasks and people would put their hands up and they're like, "Oh, we need a flyer," or whatever. And I'd be like, "I guess I can do that.
I can draw."
Yeah. And then the way people would respond to that sort of work just made me be like, "Oh, maybe this could be a thing. Maybe I should take this a little bit more seriously." And then the organizing, the political organizing and the drawing just sort of double helixed or whatever. And and then it just became a way of articulating my politics. So there was kind of no going back from there.
Yeah. So is that how you got involved with the Workers' Art Collective? And, what kind of thing you do with them, and what is it for those that don't know?
We started that, like, I don't know, maybe like 5 years ago. There was actually, we didn't realize at the time, but we found out there was a group called the Workers' Art Club in the 1930s in Melbourne, which was also like socialist and anarchist artists who were connected to grassroots stuff, and also with a link to Melbourne Trades Hall. So it's kind of crazy, like almost 100 years later, we're doing a very similar thing. So there's about a dozen or so of us, and a bunch of us work out of a shared art studio in one of the little towers, like the turrets of Trades Hall. And we all collaborate and like do workshops with workers. We're all union members and come from different industries, and have different mediums as well. So like if a union or an activist group contacts us and they're like, "Oh, we want an animation," or "We want like a big like massive banner for this event we're having," or "We want to do a session where we bring workers together to do X," or whatever, make a mural or something, like different people would have different skills to offer. And it's also like a way to not compete with each other, because the art world, or a lot of this world, can pit people against each other, and there are like finite gigs and stuff. So this is a way of us really deliberately being like, no, we support each other, and we're not going to buy into that. Like, we champion one another's work, and even if we're doing our own work, we still make time to give each other feedback and check in. And like, we might just be like, "Oh, which of these layouts looks better?" and in the group chat. Or it's a pretty special thing, especially because like all my other jobs I've had co-workers which I really liked, and is making me even think of getting a day job again, because I miss working with people. But this is one way to have being an artist be like a less solitary practice. Which is an OHS hazard of art, as they say.
And of course, being right there at the trades hall as well, you've got the unions there. I suppose they come knocking at the door sometimes and say, "Hey, we need something."
Yeah, literally, you just run into them in the hall and you're like, "Oh, what's going on?" And they're like, "Oh, these people just got sacked," or whatever. And you're like, "Oh, well, let's make something to get a little bit of eyeballs on it." And you know, what we do can't take the place of organizing or real political action, like, but it clicks into it pretty neatly and helps more people hear about it. And yeah, it's just part of like an ecosystem of like struggle or whatever. I don't know. It's hard to talk about without sounding cheesy.
Well, it's solidarity as well, you know, and I think that's a really, really important word. I always say,
it's beautiful.
If we had more solidarity about everything, like even I work for a public library, so you know, but if we had more solidarity, for example, in council between different departments, things would go better. And
That's
I'm sure
true.
we will get a better enterprise bargaining agreement as well, you know.
Absolutely, 1,000,000%. Yes. Music to my ears.
Yeah. So
like
yeah.
we always say, like the rich have class solidarity. You know, they know how to have a united front generally. So we need to do that too. We need to be like loyal to each other and stick up for each other and see the overlaps wherever we can.
That's right. That's right. Yeah. So of all that work that you've done actually for unions, and I imagine it's a lot. I've seen little things, but I imagine there's a lot more. Is there something that really stands out that you're really proud of, and you're like, yeah, that was really, really awesome to be part of that?
I think like the process of making stuff is often really special. Like sometimes we'll go in a little group to, I don't know, out to regional Victoria and like meet up with some undocumented farm workers and people who are really risking a lot to even be a member of a union, and like they do like wildcat strikes that are very illegal, and just like the guts of these people, that sort of process of making stuff with them is more what I think of and like gives me heart rather than the finished product, because you're never that happy with your own work. Like there's the odd piece that you're like, oh yeah, I think I got that right, but there's that funny line like Pat Grant said about the only reason artists keep making new work is so that no one will look at their old stuff. So like I can't really think of that many pieces that I'm like, yeah.
So what I'm hearing is that it's more about the process and actually the satisfaction of talking to these people and actually seeing and you know, maybe being part of something that hopefully will change things for the better.
Yeah, exactly. And seeing it contextualized too. Like sometimes someone will DM me on social media with a photo of something I made up in their workplace, and I can see a couple of their co-workers around or something, and that is when I'm like, oh yeah, this is like I'm a little bit less alienated from my work, because you're kind of just making stuff and throwing it out there hoping something sticks, but you don't really know what means anything to anyone, and that's fine. It's just the nature of the beast. But
that's awesome. Now obviously doing all these like posters and all these little things, it's the progression to creating a non-fiction graphic novel kind of seems natural, but at the same time, was it? Because, you know, like committing to doing a whole graphic novel, it's a huge thing, you know? So how did the project come about?
It is huge. I knew it was huge, but I don't think I fully comprehended what I was getting myself into. It's very easy to sign a book deal, but then you have to make the thing. So, but I did resist it for a while. Like Scribe, who are my publishers, they're really, really awesome to work with. And they, since like 2014, they have been getting me to come to the office and have a coffee and just be like, is there anything that you would like to make a long book about? And I knew that it would take years to do. And I was like, oh, you guys seem cool, but there's nothing that I really want to sit with for that long, or, you know, nothing that I know that much about. So, and then I got more and more into unions, and we're having these like annual coffee dates, and I'd be like, sorry, I got nothing. But then I think maybe the third one, I was like, yeah, maybe we could do like a union thing, because I'd already drawn a bunch of stuff, and they were like, oh yeah, maybe it could just be an anthology of things you've already drawn, maybe with one extra comic to contextualize it and link them together a bit. And that's what this project was supposed to be. But then, yeah, like we were saying, you look at your old work, you're like, oh, no, this won't do. So I kept like pulling bits out, and eventually I just said, no, we have to just start over and make something new. And yeah, that's how it happened. They were really patient with me though. Like I took forever. It took like 5 years, which I'm told by other cartoonists is normal, but I felt so guilty. But it did benefit from like that gestation, and
yeah,
it gave me a lot of time to experience different stuff and fold critiques in, and yeah, hopefully it was worth the wait, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. I really enjoyed the book. Really loved it. I read it yesterday. You know, I just no, not yesterday, Sunday. Sorry, a couple of days ago.
How long did it take you to read? I'm curious.
I don't know. I just sat down and I just went through it.
In one sitting?
Yeah.
That's cool. That's what I hope for, because I feel like it's a selling point that you can still get the smug, like I just read a book feeling, but you get to do it way quicker with a comic.
yeah, definitely. Yeah, no, it was in one sitting. It's quite a read because there's so much detail. You know, there are pages that have so much detail, and there's a lot of text as well. And so it's a substantial read, definitely. Very informative.
Yeah, hopefully it's mature at some points, because I was like, there's a lot of history in there. I was really at pains to not make it feel like a textbook, because you know, most people don't really want to read history, and I was like, how can I sweeten this up and like slap some googly eyes on it or something? But I just really didn't want it to feel like a school textbook or anything. But there is like one chapter especially where it is just a lot of history, and I hope that's not too much for people. But
I guess for me, no, but I do read a lot of history books too, so I don't know.
Yeah.
But for me, it really worked, and yeah, it was a really great journey. So yeah. So,
thank you, I appreciate that. I feel like you need a bit of the history. What's that?
A glowing review from me.
Oh, bless. I appreciate it. It's very weird to have it like, just, you know, it was such a private thing for so long, and no one really read it. And then now it's like in very random places, and just anyone could read it. And it's, yeah, obviously I'm just describing what a book is, but it's kind of a bit spooky.
Yes.
You just feel like you got your guts on the table or something.
Yeah. The book's not yours anymore. Now it belongs to everyone.
That's right.
Yes.
I said to my friend, I was like, oh, what if I hate it? And what if I think it looks really ugly? And she's like, well, you literally never have to touch it ever again. I was like, oh, that's true.
Yeah. Now, we're talking about it actually, and I just thought, for those that may not know about it, what is Our Members Be Unlimited? How would you describe it? You know?
The title?
The book in general, yeah.
Yeah. It is like meant to be, actually the title is probably a good entry point into describing it, because the title is like the first rule of the first like proto-union in the late 1700s. The first thing that they proclaimed was that we'll have unlimited members, which is like one thing that the book tries to do is talk about how past successes invisibilize how hard it was for that thing to come about. Like once things change, it kind of wipes everything away, and you can't understand the radicalism of the past very well, or like how ambitious people were, or how special victories were. So, but that rule is like pretty amazing. Like that I write in the comic that like that was a time when only 4% of British people could vote, and like just so much of what we take for granted wasn't here. And here were these people that were like, we're gonna have a group of like unlimited people, anyone can join us, and all these other militant rules going down the list. And that I really respect from their vision, but I also think it's like cool for today too, because we have like a lot of snobbery and elitism, and you know, especially within like lefty or countercultural movements, there's just like a tendency to look down the nose at everyday people. So just the idea that we should be trying to like build things with everyone, and it's going to take everyone to be able to change things. We're going to need like millions of people. So there's like a line this writer R.L. Stevens says, it's like, I don't want to be part of a left that sees itself as a subculture. I want this stuff to be embedded in everyday life. So that's sort of what I subscribe to, and that's why I like think the title still has resonance, or hopefully does.
Yeah, definitely. And I think one of the points that you made there, you know, that at the time it seems really radical, but now, you know, that's something that I've often said as well about the Communist Manifesto, actually, that, you know, at the time, imagine how radical that was, but now actually when you read it, a lot of the things that the Communist Manifesto is saying are, you know, very normal. Like people would say, oh yeah, that's fine. Like they're very widely accepted. Not everything, but a lot of it.
It changed the world. Even like terms like bourgeois, like ruling class, all these things that have just threaded through society, like from that beautiful book.
Yeah, but you know, also things like education and health, and you know, things that I mentioned there that are now quite widely accepted. You know, so yeah,
hugely influential book. It's that's a like the Godfather book.
Yes. Now, I really enjoyed the book, as I said before. I think it's a great exploration of the history of unions and how they came to be, and what they do now as well. And how did you go about deciding, you know, what to include and what not? And I think you mentioned it a little bit before, like, you know, there's a lot of history. So, you know, how did you go about finding the balance there?
It was really hard to try and decide what not to include as well as what to include. I feel like it's hard to describe, but like there's like a very rich oral tradition in the labor movement, like whether it's at the pub after knockoff or at like the work site on the lunch break, like a discrete storytelling, like just animated storytelling as a way to pass information, but like in a funny way. It's just a huge part of the labor movement, and it's kind of been on the decline as the movement declines and as people like work from home and stuff like that and are more atomized. And also as like there is less struggle, like a lot of these stories are told through struggle. Like at a strikes are down 97% since the 70s. Like when strikes would happen, people would be sitting on the picket line for days and just talking and telling stories and educating each other. So it was kind of like an attempt to distill some of the stuff that I've heard from older comrades, and like a way to try and capture some of the things that we might not be passing along to each other, like in a different format. So that was one part of the thinking. And also like trying to pitch it at, like I wanted it to be something that you could give to your teenage sibling as they started their first job, or someone who was just dipping their toe in. Like I tried to make it pretty accessible, but then trying to make it something that is also interesting for people like yourself who are already active unionists and already know about this stuff. So trying to get that tone right. It's a little bit tricky, but there's stuff like there's an appendix at the back that has definitions of a lot of the terms, and I try not to like use, in all my work, I try not to use like weird terminology or acronyms, or try to use less words where possible, stuff like that, without dumbing it down, because you got to assume that your reader is smart and like will decode what you give them, but you also have to make it accessible.
Yeah. Now, another thing that I found really interesting and I really loved is that you introduce yourself in the book with your experience working on Amazon, on an Amazon warehouse. And I really enjoyed that inclusion. And it's, I thought it was great to break, I guess, the history kind of side of it, and to bring us to the present and to see a personal story in a workplace in one of the biggest, if not the biggest, corporation in the world at the moment, and you know what the experience is like there. You know, how do you go about working that out and working that into the book, you know, because on the one hand, you know, it feels very different to the rest of the book, but on the other hand, it actually, as I said, I think it really complements it really, really well, because it brings it to the present and it gives you a very personal story and case study, you know. How did you go about that?
Yeah, it was tricky to integrate it because, you know, you're telling all these really grand stories about amazing history, like, and then my failed attempt to be part of helping unionize Amazon and just what it's like to work there. It did seem at odds a little bit. Like I wanted to, because it's the second chapter in the book, and originally in the draft I had the first chapter ends with this great moment of the first unions coming together in spite of like all the persecution and detailing some of the stuff that people went through, including getting sent to Australia as convicts as punishment for their union organizing in the UK, and then bringing unionism to Australia. All this great stuff. And then I wanted the opening panel of the chapter of Amazon to be like me, just sitting on a toilet looking really tired, and just to kind of like hit home, okay, we're standing on the shoulders of giants or whatever, but we're also like in the ruins a little bit. And this is not a sexy story. Like this is the sludge of trying to get stuff going. Is, you know, unionism, like a lot of it's very boring and like a lot of meetings and like paperwork and just failed starts and stuff like that. So I did want to try and like present the reality of that, so that it's not just romanticizing all the like rah great stuff that we pull off. But yeah, I did just at a logistic level. I like kept a diary when I worked there and tried to write down little thoughts, and like even when I would be on my lunch break or finish my shift, I would like quickly write down whatever. Like we weren't allowed a phone in there, so I couldn't do my usual note-taking technique, but I would like always take notes as soon as I could. And then once I quit, I could see a bit of an arc and tried to turn it into something.
Yeah. Well, I have to say that for me, it really worked. I thought it worked really well in the book. You know, I thought it was, as I said, it just brought it to the present and gave you a case study of why unions are still very highly relevant and important, because, you know, the work conditions there are deplorable. You know, they're inhumane, really.
Yeah. And because whatever happens there will happen elsewhere. Like everything is a cycle. Like if that union victory in Staten Island last month can be, it will be replicated. It will like beget more victory, and like failure begets more failure too. And like if we raise the wages and build people's power and capacity through those sites, it will ripple out. But also if Amazon continues to smash those sites, like there are other warehouses on the same street as the place I worked in Dandenong that got like $20 an hour more. That's not going to be the case for very long. Like just at a market logic, you can almost understand why the competitors wouldn't be able to pay that. So we have to win, or like it's hugely consequential.
Yeah, when they announced that the Amazon warehouse was being built there and they were coming here, I actually said to exactly that to my wife. That's really bad, because it's going to impoverish the whole area, and it's going to you know, really worsen the work conditions for everyone. You know, it's not just that workplace; it's going to affect everything around it. So yeah.
Unless we win.
That's right. That's right. Anyway, I would also love to talk about the visual style in the book. You know, I mean, you mentioned The Simpsons and Ren and Stimpy, but you know, like your art style is really detailed, and at the same time, it's got a rawness to it. You know, and when I was looking at it, I was like, I think it's like a great mixture of indie comic style, like underground comics, American comics, and also the kind of art that I've seen in punk zines and things like that. So can you tell me a little bit more about what are your influences in your art style, or is it just like, I have actually no idea, I just draw like this and I don't know where it's come from?
I think you answered the question better than I could. Like, definitely like that punk aesthetic was hugely influential, and still is, like Subhuman's album covers and like Run Cobb, and yeah, that black and white, just gnarly, really detailed, just overwrought faces. I love that stuff. Like even like going back to Mazaril, like some of those old lino cuts, which you can see the lineage of that leading into punk aesthetic too, I think, even though it's like 100 years ago. But and then yeah, Noel Counihan, he was in Workers Art Club. He's my favorite artist. He's from Melbourne. He's dead now, but he's an absolute boy. People should look him up. And I like Mary Lunig's work. Yeah, Holly Molly, she's in Workers Art Collective, contemporary friend of mine. A lot of the stuff that really resonates with me now is like just my friends' work, because I just can understand where they're coming from and like being part of these feedback loops. So but yeah, I think you described it well, like underground comics, like even Robert Crumb and stuff like that. And stuff.
Well, when I was a little kid, my dad actually had a lot of American underground comics. So he had a lot of Crumb. He had a lot of
You
French.
got lucky, man. You won the parent lottery. Your dad sounds great.
Interesting guy, definitely. He lived in France for a few years, and
they love the comics. Right.
Yeah, he had a lot of French comics, a lot of French political cartoons as well. And then he had a lot of Crumb, Gilbert Shelton as well, the Frick Brothers. I read it far too early, but I enjoyed it. I absolutely loved it. You know, and then of course, like I was a kid in the 80s, and in the Basque Country, the biggest music was punk, you know, and so that aesthetic and that influence is huge in my life as well, you know, completely formative. Awesome. And then in the 90s, reading things like, Daniel Close and Peter Bagg, you know, Hate. I read Hate, I devoured it. And so
I came to all that stuff way too late. I'm so jealous. That's so cool. Got to see all that. I would just like, because I grew up in Geelong and it, very suburban, and I would just like ring out that anything like just slightly alternative, but there wasn't a lot, like just before the internet kind of, and we had it a little bit, so you'd sniff things out and just like get the weirdest stuff from the video shop. But and maybe that was more satisfying, that it was a bit of a sport to like have to scour the world for this stuff, rather than now where you can find everything so easily.
To be honest, I didn't have to scour anything, because I had my dad bringing things on the one hand, and then on the other hand, my brother was 3 years older than me, and he was an absolute devoted punk rocker and huge comic book reader, and whatever he brought, I was always reading, and and for a lot of things I was far too young to read, but I still read them.
Yeah,
and enjoyed them.
Big siblings are very good at opening those portals. I'm really grateful to mine.
Yeah, definitely. Anyway, as I said before, like graphic novels are a lot of work, and there's a lot of work that's gone into this book. I can tell. They take a lot of time to make. Do you have something else in progress?
Oh, I don't think I will do anything that long anytime soon. Also, just because, yeah, like I said before, there's not that many topics that interest me that much. But I'd like to do like smaller, pulpy. People used to make political pamphlets a lot, and I kind of like that, which I guess we just call zines. Like,
Yeah.
I like that, like a well-made zine. It'd be cool if publishers were into putting out like 20, 30-page things. I'm doing a couple of like medium length things. One with probably like one of my oldest mates, Kyle. He just got arrested and thrown in jail in Queensland for stopping a coal train, an Adani coal train, and he just was digging the coal out onto the side of the track for hours and hours. And they've made an example of him and put him in jail for a while. But he wrote like a huge diary about all his interactions with people, which ends up being like an interesting text about just transitions to me, like, and to him, because everyone that he met in there like was supportive of what he had done, even though like half a dozen of them had worked for Adani, including one that was like a spy that had been like crawling around his protest camp just before, like a month before, and then like a boilermaker, and all these different workers that you might presume, if you accepted the binary presented by the media, that these like rednecks would be really anti-enviro, but they were all like, wow, good on you, like we know what's up. And so he has like all these really detailed descriptions of the interactions. That would be a good comic, because it's obviously
that sounds like a really interesting story. Already I'm sold. Where can I buy it?
I don't know how we're gonna do it, but we just know we're gonna do it, and it might take a little while, but that's something in the medium term. And then I'm doing a thing with my favorite author, Jeff Sparrow. He's written this text about like the difference between what he calls direct, delegated, and smug politics, like as a way of seeing everyday people stepping up and fighting for themselves, kind of, or whether we're deferring to NGOs and politicians and looking down our nose at people as well. So he's written the text, and I'm going to try and adapt that into a pamphlet-y kind of thing in the next few months. And then apart from that, I think I am thinking about getting like a day job for a while, because I just I'm sick of sitting around drawing.
Well, I just recently actually finished reading Jeff Sparrow's book, his latest one. And
the climate one?
Yes.
That's beautiful, eh?
Excellent book. Excellent book. Really enjoyed
everyone
it.
Should buy that book.
I really enjoy his writing. So
it's such a good circuit breaker, because I feel like it's very hard to engage with climate stuff without getting into a doom hole. But the way he reframes stuff in that book is just very beautiful.
Well, so maybe we're gonna see some like a medium story and some zines, or that's awesome. And here in Melbourne, actually, we're lucky because we've got the Festival of the Photocopier, which is amazing, the best zines festival ever. So,
the zine culture in Melbourne is very, very sick. We're really lucky.
Now, to finish, we could probably go talking for forever, but could you mention your favorite 3 graphic novels, or 3 graphic novels that you read recently that you would like to recommend to others, or whatever way you want to take it?
Well, the first one that comes to mind is Safdar Ahmed's Still Alive. Is beautiful comic that just got the damn New South Wales Premier's Literary Prize.
Amazing.
So good. And he's just like such a person of integrity and skill. So that is a beautiful comic. Probably my favorite Australian comic that I've ever read.
It's an incredible book. I read it as soon as it came out. I was dying to read it, for so long, and I read it as soon as it came out. And I interviewed him. I think it was pretty much a year ago. As soon as it came out, I interviewed
got to look
him.
that up.
Yeah. Wonderful man. Great conversation. Amazing book. So I'm so happy about the award. Yeah.
Yeah, that was beautiful to see that recognition. And also just good for comics too. And good for the cause that he is committed to. So yeah, that was great news. We've had a bit of good news lately, the election and everything.
Yes.
I like Josh Santos Burrito's Long Weekend in Alice Springs too. That's a classic. Can't go past that one. It's like just very spacious and just a smart comic. Like, assumes a lot from the reader and pulls it off as well. So I love that one.
He's been working on another one, so I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think of a third one. My best mate Nikki Minus is like working on something that is a little bit further in the future, I think, but it is coming along, and it's going to be like a huge graphic novel where each page is a full drawing that you may be able to like rip it out as a poster as well, but it'll unify across the whole text, but kind of have standalone pages. That's going to be awesome.
That sounds really interesting.
I've never heard of any other book like that. So it's just so good.
That sounds really interesting. Excellent. So we got that to look forward to. Excellent.
Yeah. And thank you guys for all your champion of comics. It's really great that you're representing us and going into bat for this art form.
Yeah. Well, I when I started working at libraries, I thought I think we could do better with comics. I think we need to promote them and advocate for them, and I talked to others agreed, we formed a group, here we are.
That's awesome. And there you go, like this is a workers project, really. Like you guys are workers and you're doing this in your capacity as workers, I guess.
We're all volunteers.
In the library capacity, I guess.
But so look, an absolute pleasure to talk to you, and I hope that everyone picks up the book. If you can afford it, buy it. If you can't afford it, go to the library. And
that's right. Or if you're a union member, DM me and I'll send you a discount code, because Scribe very kindly set that up. So send me proof of your union membership and I think you get 25% off. But